Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something that impacts, well, pretty much all of us. Social Security.
A topic that, let's face it, can feel a bit like a black box.
Totally. I mean, we all see that FICA get taken out of the paychecks, but how many of us really know where that money goes? Or what happens when those scary headlines about Social Security running out start popping up?
It's definitely something we all need to understand no matter where we are in life.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it. First things first. How is this whole thing even funded? It can't just be those FICA deductions, right?
Right. Those payroll taxes are the bedrock for sure. It's a split contribution. 6.2% from you, 6.2% from your employer.
Okay, got it. So far, so good.
Now, this applies to earnings up to a certain cap. For 2025, that cap's $176,100. It gets adjusted with inflation every year.
Makes sense. Got to keep up with the times.
And for anyone out there who's self-employed, you're wearing both hats.
So they're covering the full 12.4%.
Exactly.
You mentioned different trust funds earlier, though retirement and survivor benefits, and then a separate one for disability. Why is that?
It's all about managing different needs within the system. It really highlights how Social Security is designed to be more than a one-size-fits-all program. Different situations, different pots, so to speak.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Now, one thing our research dug up that I found kind of surprising was that some funding actually comes from taxing the Social Security benefits themselves.
Yes.
Wait, so we're taxing the benefits we're giving out. That seems a little counterintuitive.
It does seem kind of strange at first glance, but it's actually a really important piece of the funding model. Basically, depending on your overall income, a portion of your benefits might be taxed.
Interesting. So it's like a self-sustaining cycle in a way.
Yeah, you could think of it that way. And this revenue either goes right back into those Social Security trust funds or it supports Medicare. It's all connected.
It's like Social Security has a little side hustle going on to help keep itself afloat. But wait, there's more, isn't there? Our research also mentioned investments in interest income. What's that all about?
You're right. When Social Security takes in more money than it pays out, which, and this is important, doesn't always happen, that surplus gets put to work.
Work, huh? Like a part-time job.
Well, more like a really smart savings plan. They invest it in U.S. Treasury securities.
Okay, gotta be honest. Treasury securities sounds kind of intimidating to someone like me who's not exactly a finance whiz. What are those in plain English?
Imagine loaning money to a friend who's guaranteed to pay you back, plus a little extra. That's basically what's happening here.
Social Security's the lender, and the government's the friend who always pays their debts.
Exactly. And because they're backed by the U.S. government, they're considered super safe investments. These things generate billions of dollars in interest each year.
Wow. Okay, so that's a pretty significant chunk of change then.
Absolutely. It's all part of ensuring the system remains viable.
So it's all about keeping that pot growing. But this brings us to something that always seems to spark a lot of debate. Does the government actually borrow from Social Security?
That's the million-dollar question, or maybe the trillion-dollar question.
Right. It always sounds a bit like, I don't know, shady dealings when I hear people talking about it.
It's definitely a point of contention. Now, the government isn't just dipping into the trust funds whenever they need cash. It's more about using those funds to cover their obligations.
Obligations? Like what?
Like this, so if we just talked about those Treasury securities, think of it like this. Social Security is essentially lending the government money, and the government promises to pay it back with interest.
So maybe not as dramatic as some people make it sound, but I can definitely see why it raises concerns, especially when you consider the long-term stability of the whole system.
You hit the nail on the head. It's about whether this kind of borrowing, even with the promise of repayment, could put pressure on Social Security's ability to pay out benefits down the road, especially given the changing demographics we're facing.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
There is. We'll get more into that in the next part of our deep dive. Welcome back. Last time, we dug into how Social Security gets its funding and talked about that whole borrowing thing between Social Security and the government.
Right, the Treasury securities thing.
Exactly. Now I think it's time to address the elephant in the room. You know, those headlines screaming about Social Security running out.
Yeah, the ones that make you want to check your retirement account balance like 5 times a day.
Exactly. So let's get into it. Is this running out scenario really a possibility, or is it all just media hype?
Give it to me straight, Doc.
Well, it's not going to be like flipping a switch, like one day the money's there and the next it's gone.
Okay, that's a little reassuring.
But there are some serious concerns. Projections show that if we don't make any changes, those trust funds we talked about could be depleted by the mid-2030s.
Depleted, meaning?
Meaning empty. And at that point, the money coming in from payroll taxes would only cover about 75 to 80% of what people are supposed to get in benefits.
So like a big pay cut for retirees.
You could say that. Millions of people, depending on that money, might see their benefits drop significantly. It could jeopardize their financial stability, affect things like healthcare and housing.
Definitely not ideal.
Yeah.
So is there anything we can do to, stop that from happening? I know our research mentioned some potential solutions being tossed around.
There are a few options on the table, each with its own pluses and minuses. One idea is raising the payroll tax rate.
You mean that 6.2% that comes out of our paychecks?
Yep, that's the one. A small increase to that percentage could generate a lot of revenue over time.
I could see how that would bring in more cash, but wouldn't it also, burden workers even more, especially those who are already struggling?
That's a valid point. Critics argue that raising the payroll tax would hit lower and middle-income folks the hardest.
Right, that makes sense.
They say it might even slow down economic growth because people would have less money to spend. But on the other hand, those who support this idea emphasize that even a tiny increase spread across a huge workforce could really make a difference in the long run.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot, the balance between getting more money into the system without hurting people too much.
Exactly. Now, another approach is increasing the taxable income cap. Remember how only earnings up to $176,100 are subject to Social Security taxes right now?
Yeah, we talked about that.
Well, bumping that ceiling up could bring in a lot of revenue, too.
So asking those who earn more to pay more, I bet that's a hot topic.
You're telling me. It's definitely a controversial one. People who like this idea say it's fair because those higher earners usually get higher benefits when they retire, too.
Makes sense. Contribute more, benefit more. Right.
Right. But those who are against it say it's unfair to target high earners, that it could stifle entrepreneurship and hurt economic growth. Some even see it as a way of redistributing income, which they say wasn't the original purpose of Social Security.
Okay, so another tough one. We're trying to get the money we need without, causing other problems. Are there any other ideas out there? Maybe something less, controversial?
Some folks are talking about adjusting eligibility requirements.
What does that even mean?
It could be things like gradually raising the retirement age since people are living longer these days.
Oh, so pushing back when people can start collecting benefits.
Yeah, or making changes to the formula used to calculate benefits.
Okay, so wouldn't that mainly impact people who haven't retired yet?
You got it. Current retirees wouldn't see much of a change.
I can see how that would cause some pushback, especially for people who need those benefits sooner because of health problems or jobs that are hard on the body.
Right. Plus, some argue it might disadvantage lower-income workers who don't have the same options to keep working longer as higher earners. Another approach is means testing.
Means testing, fill me in.
Basically, adjusting benefits based on a person's income and assets.
So if you're doing well financially, you might get less from Social Security.
Yeah, while folks with lower incomes would continue to receive full benefits.
It's kind of like targeting those resources to the people who need them most. But wouldn't that also be super complicated to manage?
For sure, there are downsides. Critics say it would mess with the idea that Social Security is for everyone, that it would create a two-tiered system. And they worry it could discourage people from saving for retirement if they think they might lose benefits because they're doing too well financially.
Okay, so every idea has its pros and cons. This is a tricky situation.
No doubt. It's a complex situation with no easy answers. But the more we understand the different factors and engage in these discussions, the better chance we have of finding a way forward that works for everyone.
I'm starting to see that this is way bigger than just tweaking a few numbers. It's about people's lives, their financial security.
You're absolutely right. It's about finding a solution that's effective and fair, and that ensures Social Security can keep doing what it was designed to do. Provide a safety net for everyone.
All right, we're back for the final part of our Social Security deep dives. We've covered how it's funded, that whole deficit thing, and all those potential solutions everyone's debating.
Right, lots of ground covered.
Now I'm kind of wondering, what does the future hold for Social Security? What can we do to, make sure it's still around for our kids and grandkids?
It's the big question, isn't it? The decisions we make today will impact things for decades to come.
Yeah, it feels like we're at some kind of crossroads.
It does, doesn't it? And one of the biggest factors that will shape the future is, well, demographics.
Demographics, you mean like how many people are having babies?
That and also people living longer. As baby boomers retire and lifespans increase, The balance between workers and retirees shifts.
Fewer people paying in, more people taking out.
Exactly. It puts a real strain on the system's resources. And on top of that, we got to consider economic growth.
Right, because a strong economy means more jobs, more people earning money, more money going into Social Security.
Exactly. But when the economy slows down, like during a recession, less money flows into Social Security.
So it's not just about how many people are working, it's about how well the economy is doing.
Right. And then there's technology and automation, which are changing the workforce in ways we're still trying to figure out.
Whoa, so robots taking our jobs and messing with Social Security.
Well, it's not that simple, but automation will definitely have an impact on how many people are contributing to Social Security and what kinds of jobs are even available. It makes you think, how do we adapt to all these changes?
It's a lot to wrap your head around. Demographic shifts, economic uncertainty, robots. What can we even do about it?
Well, the first thing is to stay informed. We've scratched the surface here, but there's always more to learn. Read different perspectives, talk to people, and really try to understand the issues.
Knowledge is power, as they say.
Hmm.
But knowing stuff is only half the battle, right? What can we do?
Talk to your elected officials. Let them know what you think about Social Security, what you want to see happen. Go to town hall meetings, write letters, make those phone calls, make your voice heard.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that we actually have a say in this stuff.
You absolutely do. You can also support organizations that are working to protect and strengthen Social Security.
Like donating money or volunteering.
Yeah. There are advocacy groups, think tanks, research institutions, all sorts of folks working on this. Find one that you connect with and get involved.
All right, so we can stay informed, contact our representatives, and support organizations. What else?
Talk to people you know about Social Security, family, friends, coworkers. Share what you've learned, listen to what they have to say. We need to be talking about this stuff.
Sometimes those hard conversations are the ones that teach you the most, right?
Totally. And at the end of the day, remember that the future of Social Security isn't set in stone. What happens next depends on the choices we make.
So it's up to us to be informed, engaged, and make our voices heard. It's been a wild ride exploring all the ins and outs of Social Security. We've learned how it works, the problems it's facing, and some of the ideas people have for fixing it.
Right. And through it all, it's important to remember the human side of this. Social Security impacts millions of lives, and we all have a role to play in making sure it's strong and secure for future generations.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.